which is about late night entertainment uses, so particularly those uses. How should the City Council manage the impact of late night entertainment uses? For example, should the City Council continue to use planning conditions when granting permission to new entertainment uses to limit opening hours, number of people entering the premises, etc., or adopt the use of premises management plan? I don't know if one of the officers would maybe briefly like to outline what a premises management plan is. Any takers? Go on.
A bit unwillingly. I think this is a detailed description of how the premises will be operated in, as to what it's for, what its client group is like, and getting down to details of, when it will close, the sort of volumes of music it will have, how it will handle its waste and recyclables, a fully fledged management plan. I'm not sure that actually that fits particularly well in the planning regime. I think it fits pretty well in a licensing regime. At the moment, many applicants provide the barest outlines of what they do, and it's up to the licensing authority, by a process of a hearing and asking questions, and the other authorities suggesting measures to define what the use is. But I think a premises management plan approach could work well in licensing, and in fact is what probably the government envisaged when they had something called an operating schedule. But currently, that's something that evolves only when the decision is made, rather than being something submitted to the council. I don't know if that helps.
Can I come in on this one? I just would like to pick up what was said earlier about developing, changing opportunities. When we applied the licensing objectives to a Westminster licensing policy, we were in a position, because the government offered us this opportunity, to say that within the stress areas, which are they call cumulative impact areas, we could stop any new development or any later hours and so forth. And we chose not to take that option. We chose to say that we would consider each application on its merits, which we're also required to do, but because we don't want to set uses in aspic, because, as was said earlier, things do develop, there are changes, and we felt, from a licensing point of view, that we had to be in a position to be alive to that. Otherwise, we could find uses which we don't think are particularly helpful, protected, and it would stop people developing things which we would actually find much more attractive. And so in the case of licensing, we took a point of view which was said that you shouldn't try and fix everything for all time. And just a point I meant to make earlier, we are, in licensing, required to review our licensing policy every 3 years. And we're now halfway through our second stage policy, and we will be, during the course of next year, consulting widely on a new licensing policy. So some of these issues which refer specific to license, can be discussed at that point.
Anybody like to add anything, start off some discussion on late night entertainment uses?
I think the whole idea of the management plans would be just totally unworkable in a planning sense. I think you're absolutely right that it should be focused in on the licence side, because then you're in with a known operator. And so often we can find ourselves acting for a landlord who is seeking permission for a new destination restaurant function, for example, and he doesn't know who his end user is actually going to be, but he needs permission there in order to get the best possible end user. So I think requiring detailed management plans at day one, i.e. when someone is talking about planning, is difficult. Nonetheless, planning does have plenty of other conditions in its armoury: hours of operation, refuse storage collection, all those sorts of things which are enforceable, readily enforceable. I think your enforcement teams are busy enough as it is without having to worry about having to enforce or being minded to enforce very complex management plans that frankly probably don't have a lot to do with planning.
I'd just like to mention the problems that we have in our area from the point of view of amenity of the people who live in our area. It is a relatively small area, which I've already described, is right on the corner of the stress area. It is the policy of Westminster City Council and certainly our trust to increase the residential population in our area. And we will do everything we can to do that. However, there's no doubt that there is a conflict between the policies of the nighttime economy and the amenity of the people who live in our area. Now, we have studied, as most people here would have done, the strategy, Westminster strategy for for noise, which is from 2009 right up to 2014, and it is a superb document. It has been very well thought out. The only criticism I have of that document is that there doesn't seem to be a real understanding of the needs of the residents. Now, you may say this is a very bland statement I'm making. Yes, it goes into all the details of what happens outside a nightclub or a pub in the so-called silent hours. But what it doesn't do, it doesn't take a on the whole view of everything that's happening in that area. And we have constant complaints in our area from the residents that in the middle of the night you get revelers who are screaming their heads off. You get people in say, St. James's Square. They come back from a nightclub and they turn on their stereos and they have a party and everyone wakes up. Now, you may think I'm overdoing it a bit, but that's not the impression I get from people who live in the area. Now, we have tried lobbying for a noise abatement zone, and I now know that it's not appropriate. But everything I've said here in this strategy has been looked at piecemeal, but there's no overall idea of how to control it. You can control what's going on outside a nightclub, but what you can't control is 400 yards away or half a mile away, people coming and going and vehicles coming and going. That is the problem. We have, yes, there is a cumulative impact, but you can't pinpoint a particular nightclub to what's happening away from their door. And there needs to be. Now, I'm on the police panel for the area, and we know it's a problem. There's not enough police to manage this, and there doesn't seem to be a strategy for managing it. Now, I've been talking today to our noise expert, and he's advised that, and he said this won't go down well with Westminster City Council. There is a piece of legislation from the European Commission, and I'll just mention what it is. They're talking in terms of an environmental noise directive of 2002, which talks about quiet areas, and that we're not sure where it's got to with the British government, and we're not sure where Boris has got with it, but that certainly would be a means of quietening down what's going on in our area. and I'm sure that we get the same support as I am getting from the Soho Society. Something needs to be done to ratchet down nighttime noise, and it's no good just penny pinching and going from one site to another and trying to rectify it. We know there's a very efficient noise team, but they are limited in their scope. There is no overall strategy that will control everything that's going on during the so-called silent hours. London needs to become more silent for the people who are sleeping there.